Hello, my name is Garrett Seeley, and I'm going to show you how to go through the Windows portion of our lab. I'm just going to open up Utilities, and we'll tell you all about it. If you do want to see what you're supposed to be doing, if you go through the Windows Practical material here, you will find an actual precursor of what we're going to go through. I'm just going to go through the first sheet on the first recording here. I might go back to the sheet periodically just to rehash things. Go down to your search and type Device Manager. Device Manager is a software that runs the hardware, and specifically the hardware drivers. A driver is a software that runs hardware. If you click on any device, say for example I got my Bluetooth adapter here, if I go into Properties, it'll talk about the driver itself, and that's what's really important. It'll also tell me if the device is working properly, but the most important thing here is to maintain drivers. The next one here is Disk Management. Notice it tells you the purpose of disk management. Disk management is to create and format hard disk partitions. A partition is a walled-off space of the hard drive. A format is the structure in the partition that holds data. Think of it like a table for holding data. In fact, they call it the file allocation table. If you go ahead and click that, you'll notice that it'll bring up my hard drives, and it'll show you the types of partitions that I've got set into my system and what those partitions are doing. For example, I've got one here that, almost 16 gigs that's used for my virtual memory, and it's called R. There's my main hard drive partition. Notice it tells me the formats that are on there. The format is the file system and TFS. So, next one, if you type virtual memory, you will not get it. It'll tell you something else. You don't want to do virtual memory. What you want to do is you want to do instead performance. Adjust the performance. You got to remember to go to Advanced. Advanced is up at the top. Click Advanced. Notice virtual memory. If you go into virtual memory, here's what it looks like. It allows you to actually set memory backup on the hard drive. And if you are ever lost as to the definition, the virtual memory sets the paging file. A paging file is an area on the hard drive that Windows uses as if it were RAM. The report is basically writing itself at this point. So we'll go ahead and we'll click OK and leave that. The next one is Power Options. If you go to Power and Sleep, go to Advanced or Additional. Choose what the power button does. Notice here you've got a lot of different options. You've got sleep, which is that the device is still on. The hard drive and video is off, but the motherboard and memory is on. And the device is just waiting for you to grab the mouse or the keyboard and bring it out of sleep. Shutdown is fully off. Turn off the display is just disable video. Everything else stays on. If you were to select sleep or turn off, it's very important for you to understand that the battery is still being used. Hibernate is an interesting hybrid between sleep and shutdown, where it takes the RAM, much like virtual memory, it saves it to the hard disk and then shuts everything down. When it's brought back up, it goes right back to where it was. Now, this is very important because in the medical field, often we use laptops for things. People often shut the lid or hit the power button, and they want it to be able to come right back to where it was when they power it back up. So we use a lot of hibernate settings, and you all need to be alert to that. So I'm going to go ahead and close out of that. The next one's msconfig. It's actually called system configuration, but the old command for it was msconfig, and if you type that in there, you will get system configuration. Bring that up. Notice it talks about the startup of the device. This is how you could select safe mode. Safe mode is a minimum drivers and services load, so it's just basically the bare essentials is required to make the system run. It's used for troubleshooting options, so this would be a great troubleshooting option for you. Now, boot options, this is where you can actually go through and add additional operating systems. This is much like the Macintosh Boot Camp, only you don't have to pay for it. It's part of Windows as is normally included. Services, it's very important for you to understand what a service is. What a service is, what a service is, for example, Windows Audio, this would disable the audio in my system. If I'm having problems with one of my options to Windows, I would disable it here. And then that is actually what a service is. It's just an option to Windows. Notice you can hide the services, and you can find the options to Windows that have been set in by other companies. So I'm having problems, for example, because I've done this before with my DTS, and if I wanted to disable it, this is where I would do that. Oh, so the next one. When programs are starting up, they've actually moved that to Task Manager. So there's programs that fire up for you that's upon starting up your machine, those machines that load things automatically. It's in Task Manager or it's in Services. So you want to look at both of those places. Here's the startup options, and these are the things that are firing up. In fact, actually, I see something I want to disable. I do not need to have all of my Xbox services on when my system fires up, because I do not use Xbox. So going over here to processes, you're going to notice that this is what your software list would look like. If I go ahead and click fewer details, this is more than likely what you are going to see. Notice if I hit more details, you'll have a lot more information as to the things that are running on your system. Notice the FreeCam is taking a lot of my hard disk, but not a lot of my memory. What's taking a lot of my memory right now is Chrome. And Chrome has actually got a lot of options. If you go over here to details, you're going to notice something called the PID. That's actually going to be very important for the future. Notice all the SVC hosts. That is a communication to a foreign machine. And notice if I go here to name, I can tell how many versions of Chrome I'm running. Chrome opens up a new instance every time you open up a new web page, so having a bunch of tabs open makes a lot of your systems run slower. So if you go here to processes, you can actually figure out which machine, by clicking the top here, you can actually figure out which one of these programs is taking all of the resources from your machine. So that's what Task Manager shows you, is all the current running software and the resources that they are using. Moving along, you're going to need to go into the computer drive maintenance portion. There is something we want to cover, error checking, and we want to cover what a bad sector is. You're going to need to go down here to File Explorer and click on File Explorer. I tell everyone to go ahead and click on this PC. Scroll all the way down. Remember, you've got all of these partitions. Go ahead and highlight a partition. If you don't do this, it will fight you. So click on a partition. Don't double click. Right click, go into properties, and notice then it'll take you to this nice little utility where you can do things like purge, recycling bin, and other things like that. So sometimes you will find that disk cleanup will help you, but more importantly, you want to go to disk tools. Error checking checks for bad sectors. It's very important that you write down what a bad sector is. The bad sector is a bad portion of the hard drive, or portion of the hard drive that no longer works. Once you start throwing bad sectors, it is basically the beginning of the end of that drive, and you have limited amount of time to get the information off of that. In the case of an old hard drive, you have days. In the case of a new solid state, you have hours. So run. The next thing is optimizing the disk. Now, hard drives store information in the form of fragments, little bits of a file. Remember, before I told you that there was a file format. That's the way to store data. It's a table. Well, tables only have shelves that are so big. So what the computer does is it takes the program and it shortens it into little fragments, bits that need to be reassembled, and then it puts those bits wherever it has space. Well, as those bits get spread throughout the hard drive, the hard drive itself will have to work harder and run slower. So what does this do? It optimizes your hard drive and helps them run more efficiently. In other words, it reorders them and they run faster. So that's an important thing for you to understand. Moving along, the next thing that we have for maintenance is reliability monitor. Type reliability. You'll notice reliability history. Click on that. And here is the error for the system. If you click on any one of these areas where they got a red X, you'll notice that they got some problems. Notice earlier I said I had some problems with my DTS audio. There's a problem with my DTS audio. Here's a problem with the Armory Crate software. Click on this one, again, problem with DTS audio. And if I click on this one, a problem with Xbox, which is why I disabled my Xbox most recently. So there you can see that we've got a problem from the system that's running. The rest of these things are updates that were not fully done, and this is all a great error log, and you'll notice that it goes back 4 weeks. So lots of data here going back for several days. The next thing that you're going to want to do is we want to get into backup. And so in order to do that, we got to go to the registry, type registry, get registry editor. I'll go ahead and click yes and get into that. So the question is, what is a registry editor? Well, what is a registry? A registry is a list of software settings throughout the entire machine. This is a software settings for Windows included. So it's one master configuration list for all of the software, including Windows. Let me say that again. One master configuration list for all software, including Windows. So you don't have to worry about what's underneath it. If you go ahead and dig into this, you'll find all sorts of different settings for all sorts of different softwares. And yes, it shows you all of the settings for those softwares. You don't really need to know that. It also shows you all the users' logins. What you really need to know is this. You go up to the top under File. There's Export to back it up, Import to restore it. If you go ahead and back it up, I suggest to back it up and put it on your main partition, because if you need this, you know, it's good to have it, and it's good for it to be easy to find. So if you go ahead and save that, it'll go ahead and back up the registry, and when it's done with that, it'll go ahead and tell me it's okay. It'll back up everything except the stuff that is using currently, which is as best as I can get. Moving along, the big question is, Windows will ask, what do you really need to know about this? You need to know that export backs it up, import restores it, otherwise just stay out of it. So that's what Windows wants you to know. It is not the only way for you to back up the system. There is System Restore. Click on a System Restore, and it'll bring up Create a Restore Point. I'm going to click on Create a Restore Point. Notice it's got System Restore. You want to make sure your protection is on for each one of the areas that you're configuring. If not, you can configure it to make sure that you have that. Do not have it disabled, to have it turned on. System Restore does a backup of all of the important files like registry. It does not affect personal files, pictures, or other things. It does, however, affect software that's been installed. I know this is a good thing for you to have running because viruses try to knock it out. So this is a good way for you to roll the system back to how it was functioning the other day. One last thing, user accounts. If you type user, it'll say add, edit, or remove other people, other users. Go ahead and click on that. Notice it has add somebody else to the system. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. It's going to ask, do you have the Microsoft login? You do not have to use the login. You can go right here. I don't have their login information. They're going to ask, well, then why don't you create a login for them? No, let's add the user without it, and this will allow you to create a username and password. This is the easiest way for you to get a person into the system so that they can log on to your system, like my son here, who is, I am told, cannot log into my system. I'll do the DOS as a separate video, and hopefully this will help you all out. Thank you.